And now I'm very happy to turn the program over to Virginia Barrett, who will introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Judy. One further announcement. We hope to see you on February 21st for a lecture by Dennis Merritt on using the Chinese wisdom oracle, the I Ching, for personal growth. Folks, today we all have something in common. We're getting older, and sometimes we feel that the hurrier we go, the behinder we get. So welcome everyone to our January lecture on the gifts and perils of aging. We welcome back our guest speaker, Dr. Robert Moradi, a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst in private practice in Santa Monica. Robert's topic today is the transition between just getting older and weaker and becoming an elder, someone who acquires more consciousness and wisdom gained from the journey of life. He will consider some of his challenges as an analyst, working with older clients to help them confront the prospect of death and to find meaning in the aging process itself. Dr. Robert Moradi is clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine and emeritus psychiatrist at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. As a Jungian analyst, he teaches at the C.G. Jung Institute in Los Angeles and the Rice Davis Graduate Center and the New Center for Psychoanalysis. He's published extensively in his field. So on the topic of gifts and perils of aging, psychological development in the later phase of life, please welcome Robert Moradi.
Well, am I on?
Yes,
Okay.
you are.
Okay. I can't see myself anymore, right? Oh, I can put myself on this speaker, right? And then, but okay, you guys can see me, but I'm in a corner. It's fine.
Do you have, you can set your screen at the top to speaker view.
I did, but it's fine. This is fine.
It's
good to have it this way, and I put it on the gallery view. How is that? Yeah, I can see some of you. So many people have registered to talk about the sexy topic of getting old and dying. On a Sunday afternoon, beautiful day here in Southern California. So welcome. I hope that what I have to contribute is something that might be of value to you. I have been thinking about why is it that I've chosen to talk about aging and the at this station of life, and I think it's important. I think I have chosen to talk about it because I want to learn about it, and I want to learn about it because I don't think that anyone knows really what it. We certainly don't know about the mystery of death. So so I have to talk about that first. We have to talk about death first, so that then we can talk about the process of dying, and which is usually a shorter period of old age. And then we can talk about the old age and getting older. So, and what are the things that we can, what are the dangers of this station of life? What are the perils? And what might be the values of what we can learn through this process of getting older. I had it. I have written a presentation, but last moment I was thinking about I'm not going to use the written material. I am going to risk it and just talk with you about it, because I thought about what is it that leads me to want to read it rather than just speak it. And one thing that came to my mind is one of those aspects of old age that I think that it's an important one of those psychological aspects of old age, which is humility. I wanted to read it because of my vanity. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I didn't want to be criticized. I wanted to be tight and well put together. But I thought, well, I am among colleagues and many friends who are here today, and I can just talk about it and talk about the process of getting old and why I have chosen to talk about it now and what I think about it, and invite you guys to join me during the discussion part or during the question and answer part to share with the rest of us what are your thoughts about this particular station of life. And by old, I mean, I don't mean statistically old, because we know that young children consider their parents who are in their 30s as being old. And we know that teenagers consider 50-year-olds as being very old. So old is what is old is something that depends on who is addressing the old age. But what I would like to define it as old is when we become conscious and more clear of the fact that the time is limited and the horizon is approaching, and we know some of our contemporaries who are getting very ill and dying, and we of course know many people who have already gone through the transition. So when that becomes a more palpable reality, then we are old. However, I know people who are very old and don't think about death, and they don't think about dying. And I will address that. And I'm not suggesting that we have to think about it or that's the good thing to do, because each one of us entered this process, this particular age, this development, in a psychological development phase of life, in a very unique way. It's very different than the development of children. You know, they grow into becoming a member of the society and learning about how to live within the collective expectations. We, on the other hand, at the later phase of life, we have to find our own way, our own individual, unique way to go through this later phase of life. I think what is, of course, the fact is that we will all die. That's that we know. And the other part of it is that we will relatively most of us die relatively in a one way or the other. Some with illnesses and with a period of a few days or a few weeks or a few months until we die. That's the process of dying. that is a very significant one to think about. And many of us share that, of course. But who the individual becomes at that period of time that we are still healthy, relatively healthy, no life-threatening illness is we are inflicted by, or no life-shortening illness, or no, life-shortening illness we are inflicted by. It's the time to think about how to enter this phase of life in terms of relationship with oneself and relationships with our partners, relationships with our children, grandchildren, friends, colleagues, and also relationship with the world in which we have lived, and our and how to do this phase, how to go through this phase. That one of its inevitable events is that we get sick, and death itself. We are facing death at this age, and we know that it's brutal in the sense of ending of relationships, and not being available anymore to anyone in the body, and not having a connection to this world the way we do now. So for that fact that is universal, we have to develop a myth. We have to have a myth about death first, each one of us. We have to have a philosophy about it. About what death is, and whether there is a continuity beyond this, the life in the body. And for that part of it, I think that we can gain support from almost all of the cultures in the world, that there is a sense that there is something that continues beyond the body. Jung talks about it in a scientific way by citing telepathic experiences, paranormal experiences, the dreams of people who have died and they appear to be visitations. So there are different ways that experimentally or experientially we can accept the possibility that some aspect of psychic life continues beyond bodily life. So nice to be in the body, to have a drink of water, and it's really lovely to have the opportunity to talk with friends and colleagues about this, because it's a taboo in the Western culture. You know, it's a taboo. I think that partly it's a taboo because of the dominance of the scientific mind that considers death as end of life and as the end of everything. And that I for me that certainly is not helpful. That certainly is not helpful in the sense that we know that something is coming, a transition is coming, and the transition into non-existence totally, it doesn't feel good, doesn't work well for the aging person. But we also know that it's the materialistic aspect of looking at life in the Western industrial world that has dictated this outlook on uh, on on many in the West. But in the modern Western society, not of course in the philosophies um, of cultures that preceded the Renaissance and the change um, into the modern culture that we live in. So there is an aspect of death that the continuity, is there a continuity or not, and, and having a certain personal myth about it that I think that is a um, valuable place to valuable container to place one's one's approaching death. Uh, like like the Indian culture with all of its richness. When in the Gita, when Arjuna asks Krishna about what's going to happen to me if I go to this battle with my enemy, Krishna's response is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you will continue, and there will be a reincarnation, and you will come in a different form, and that will continue. So there is a sense of continuity and not the sense of an end that some of the Western culture carries with itself, carries about the notion of death. And the same is in the Islamic culture. The same is in majority of Jewish scholars. So we see that the cultures of the world have accepted the possibility or talk about the idea that there is a continuation beyond this earthly life. So that's a comfort to me, whether it's true or not. But it's something that each one of us need to develop on our own. The process of dying is a separate thing, I think. The process of dying is I consider it from the time that we know that we have a certain limited length of time left before we die until we die. So it can be somewhere between a few weeks to a couple of years. Usually that's the process, that's the length of time that if we are lucky and we don't die suddenly, that's what we have. And that's something that I think that it's very important to be prepared for that, to be prepared for that psychologically, to be prepared for that medically, to be prepared for that in terms of relationships and what we expect of people who are around us. I seldom talk in steady talk, so my mouth gets dry. I'm usually the listener, and once in a while I say a few words. The stream of talking is not my ordinary state of relating. But to be prepared in terms of having our wishes known, particularly about how we want to be taken care of during the time that we cannot make decisions ourselves. I think that that's an important preparation for 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 the process of dying. It's a it's certainly helpful to the dying person and to have a very clear directive about how we want our body to be cared for during the time that we cannot make our own decisions. So that's one aspect of the process of dying that is significant to be prepared for. The other is about the relationships, ending of the relationships, and how we want to complete our relationships with people who have been left behind, who will be left behind, and also to think about our belongings, how we want uh, to transfer our belongings after we die. So it's a significant and not an easy aspect of getting accepting the reality that we will, if we are lucky, we will be going through a process of, we will have time and we will go through a process of dying. So to be prepared for it, I think is very significant. And that's for I think that it's important in terms of money becomes an issue, and how to how to how to be taken care of. The cost of living old and becoming older is a significant thing to consider. Not becoming a burden to others to the extent possible is a significant consideration. Uh, how to uh, how to uh, prepare our children and grandchildren for something that when our belongings are transferred to them, something that they would feel that it's equitable, it's thoughtful, it has been with we have trusted them in taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of. So that's another piece of it that I think that is important in terms of communicating and making clear what our wishes are and why we choose what we are going to choose, so that while we are living, the relationships have clarity and transparency. And I think that it helps the transition for the person who is dying, and I think that it helps the people who are in the position of caretakers and decision makers to know uh, to to be a model for them for when they approach this station of their life. Um, now, so now I have said a few words about death itself and the process of dying, but the main part of the my talk, and as the topic implies, is the perils and gifts of aging and the psychological development during the older years. And for that, I like to start with the dangers. Um, you know, one danger of people, the process of aging and getting older and very old, is the fear of death itself. So that's something that we we have to we have to confront uh, openly and consciously and within ourselves if there is a fear about death. You know, I have an aunt who is almost 100 years old. This is my mother's sister. She has she's relatively healthy. She falls and breaks bones, and she's she has recovered, and she goes through the physical therapy, and she has very good relationship with her physicians, and she's in a relatively comfortable body, despite the fact that she's most of the time she's confined to her bed. But she's not afraid of dying, and that's one of the things that I have witnessed and I have learned about. People who get very, very old, they usually are not afraid of death. And there is a paradox in it, it seems, that those who are not afraid of death live to be very, very old. And um, and if one would say that one goal of getting old, or this age, old age, is getting very, very old and living in a relatively healthy body and dying peacefully. If we say that that's the goal, then we have to think about how to get there, how to how to get to that place that we are not governed by fear, that we live in an inner state of calm and serenity, and we don't carry bitterness, we are not depressed, and we are as alive as we can be. So what does it take? What does it take to have to set the idea of getting very, very old and in a relatively healthy body and dying peacefully? What does it take to approach that uh, process and um, that phase of life? Um, so one thing that we that I consider as an an overgeneralized outlook about how to foster one's own psychological development is to encounter the undesirable emotions with consciousness, to avoid denial, to avoid distractions from whatever uh, is unpleasant or scares me or makes me angry. Confront them head on and with consciousness. Um, how to do it? One of the things that come to my mind about one of the necessary elements of getting old, as I said earlier, is humility. Humility for an old person is like the broth in a soup. You know, humility is something that has to be part of aging. Uh, Otherwise, when the uh, the broth in a soup is something that is not when we eat the soup or drink the soup, we don't know that there is broth. We just taste the soup, whether it's pea soup or lentil soup or whatever soup that is soup. So humility is like the broth of that kind of soup, you know? So that is something that is absolutely necessary, I think, for the aging process. So how can one attain humility is the question. And I think that there are, of course, Indian culture is a master. The Buddhism is embedded in that, in the philosophy of humility. However, for a psychologically curious Western mind, or the mind of, and by Western mind I mean Judeo-Christian and Islamic cultures, is the idea uh, of humility. It's something that has to be attained. It's not something that we can just have. Um, and it can be attained by encountering things that are opposite of humility. When we face them, when for example, an opposite of humility, something that is opposite of humility is vanity. And what is vanity? When I become critical as an older person about how I look, how I talk, how I think, when I forget a few things, when I have difficulty uh, fixing my computer or getting online or doing something that young people can do with tremendous facility, when I become critical of myself, when I have those expectations of myself, I have I have then I have certain vanity. I have certain expectation that as if I have to be able to do what uh, the younger people do. That's not the case. I have to accept my dependency, and the dependency on someone to show me how to access and work on the computer, on or all of the artificial intelligence machines that will become more and more parts of our life. So when I encounter my vanity, when I encounter my bitterness about not knowing how to do something, when I hold that in consciousness, then the opposite of it, that is humility and acceptance, I realize that I have moved away from that, and I need to find a way to hold these two concepts in my mind until I find a way that moves me more towards a place that I feel calmer and uh, and have more serenity. So, what the um, what is the main not ingredient, but what is the main aspect of what provokes psychological development in old older years is a conscious encounter with problems. Problems grow as we grow older, and not to avoid them, not to drink our way out of them, not to numb ourselves, not to use drugs, not to distract ourselves from them, but face them head on, I think, is because those problems are what makes us learn about what we are made of, learn about how our capabilities, our abilities to encounter them with serenity. We learn about uh, how we um, how we can be dependent, without feeling shame. So problems of old age, whether they are physical, medical, emotional, or technical problems of old age, they are all vehicles for us to grow into old age by not avoiding them, but by facing them consciously. Um, the other aspect of old age that I think is a significant piece of what makes old age work for us. There are two other things that I have to remember to mention. One is about reflection, and the other one is about search for meaning in old age. I think that those two attributes would help aging process work better for us. What I mean by reflection is different than it's different than remembering what the history of one's life. Of course, we do remember them, and it's valuable to remember. However, we reflect upon the previous stations of life in order to see where we are in terms of the problems that we faced at the earlier stages of life and the way we faced them. Let me give you a concrete example. When I was 14, another boy in the neighborhood punched me in my belly. It was unfair, and I had not provoked him, but he was a bully, and he punched me. What I know and I remember is that certainly I did not respond to him because I was shocked totally, but I also didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't talk to my parents about it. I didn't talk to other kids about it, in the neighborhood about it. I just carried it. And I, of course, in my heart, I carried deep resentment towards this boy that lasted for several years. But I was thinking that if the difference is, so that's a memory, but the reflection is bringing me back to, if something unfair happened now, how would I react to the unfairness, to that unfair punch? And when I can imagine the difference, then I have a sense about my own development over the course of my life, what I have learned about how to encounter a difficult situation when something unfair happens to me. So that's an example of what the reflection is in the service of. It's in the service of learning about who we are now, not in the service of regret about the past, because that cannot be changed, of course. And it's not in the service of being self-critical. It's about a sense of one's own development over the course of life. So reflection is a significant it's a significant place to, or a significant aspect of life when we get to be old. We need to reflect upon our life. Again, not necessarily getting stuck in one's history, but learning about oneself through the past and bringing and integrating that past into the present, so that with that, then the future is something that becomes, that has the wisdom of the ages of the of of one's own previous life. So in that sense, reflection is in the service of present time, as also in the service of our future. The other, I think, a very important uh, thing to do in old age, during the old age, is search for meaning. And I don't think that we can find absolute meaning of what the meaning of our life has been or will be. In fact, Rumi, the Persian poet of 13th century, he says that your name is not known until you take your last breath. So what he's basically saying is that um, we continue to grow until we die. So there is no end to this. However, the search for meaning of one's life, what it does is that that process of the search itself makes one aware of one's who we are, what um, what are the what's the purpose of my life now, and that by itself, that search enlivens one's life. And what we need in old age is to be as alive as we can be. And that aliveness is in part a product of the search for meaning of life. So the other aspects of, the other things that we face in old age, that I think that it's important to, whenever there are these undesirable emotions, the search for their opposite is something that can help the individual live a more alive life. One other example of afflictions of old age is, I mean, psychologically, physically, of course, we know that we will be facing many or various forms of physical problems, but psychologically, when there is anxiety, there is fear. When any form of anxiety, and like any kind of anxiety, our task is to encounter that fear consciously. In fact, this is uh, the foundation of psychoanalysis, that we face our fears rather than avoiding them, rather than somatizing them, or rather than bringing our fears into our relationships and creating uh, conflicts in relationships. So one of the values of fear is the fact that fear is in the service of making life safe. So fear, when I have fear, it means that I have to find a way to make my life safer. And so in that sense, fear, anxiety is helpful in the psychological development, inner sense of safety and serenity, and also helpful in a practical way to make aspects of life that are possible to control and to change them and control them in a way that one would feel safer in one's life. I think it's a very important piece of getting old. The other is depression. Depression uh, is is basically about uh, certain the feeling of depression is regression, is regressing to a place of um, not being capable and losing hope and feeling helpless. So when depression affects us, that is in the service of finding a way that uh, life become finding a way to find meaning and hope and progress and development in life. So depression means that we have something has been diminished in terms of our expansion. There is a fear of expansion. There is a fear uh, of becoming more than what one has been. The other is that to remember that we are not just our symptoms. We are not things that we are concerned about or we worry about or we fear. We are much bigger than that. So in that sense, one of the psychological tasks of older age is uh, learning about the limitations of ego, of what we are conscious of. Jung gives uh, a nice analogy about this, about the limitations of the ego. He says it's similar to when you have a flashlight in the dark and you light the flashlight and you only see what is lit by that flashlight. And you can move it around and you can see the borders of what is lit, but you cannot see the totality of what is in the dark. The ego, human ego, is like that flashlight. We only see uh, through the limitations of our abilities to see. And one of the tasks of old age is to enhance the places, to bring that light to a larger and larger darknesses that are in our soul, or things that we do not see. By darkness, I don't mean necessarily something negative, things that we cannot see about ourselves. So the other valuable aspect of getting old and having a limited time left is uh, relativizing our our knowledge, knowing that what we know about ourselves and about the world is a very limited knowledge, and so much that we don't know. And through our pains and our difficulties and problems, we can enlarge the scope of our vision, and we can connect to what is not conscious to us. Uh, so one aspect of it, of this process of learning about what is uh, not learning, but integrating more of what is unconscious into the conscious mind, is by encountering the problems that we are confronted with. Jung considers the process of individuation as integration of four major archetypes that he talks about, the fundamental archetypes that are integration of the shadow and of the anima, animus, and the self, and the self with the capital S. And I briefly talk about them because I think that they're important because uh, like uh, bitterness of old age, that we see cranky old men or women, you know, those aspects of life, those aspects of one's psychology during old age, if they are confronted and if they are pondered upon consciously, they lead us to learn about the shadow, our own shadow, whether it's the shadow that is a negative shadow. There are things that we do that are hurtful to others, or we are inconsiderate of the others, or they are shadows, things that are in the shadow. There are aspects of our abilities that we have not taken seriously, and we don't value them. Let's say certain particular artistic abilities we have, or different kinds of um, human uh, capabilities that we might have that are not we are not conscious of. So those are very significant pieces of psychological development during older years. And one of the things that we can do for learning about our shadow during the old years uh, is to ask others. You know, we have to have the humility to ask others about what is it about us that bothers them, hurts them, disregards them, and be open to receiving those feedback with humility and with gratitude. Because um, it's with that reflection from a trustworthy friend or family member or partner, if they are given to us and we take them to heart, we can then work on our own shadow. And I'm not saying that people don't project their own shadow on us. Of course we do, but we have to be able to discriminate what that actually belongs to me and what might be the projection of the other person. And if there is an open and honest dialogue, and with a trusting partner or a friend or an analyst or one's children, one can learn about one's shadow elements. On the subject of anima and animus, it's that for me, it's that for a man is that ability to live a more tender uh, life that are some men are denied of in and the with the approach of old age, when we do not have to carry that masculine facade and have the weight of them on us, is the opportunity to learn about our sensitivities and our tendernesses and those aspects of one's being that uh, the culture considers feminine. And the contrast, of course, with women is to learn about the ability for assertiveness, the elements of masculinity, but a mature masculinity, similar to the feminine for the man, is a mature femininity. For the woman is the mature masculinity of being assertive, of being creative, of being constructive, of being a trailblazer. Those aspects of that are animus that women can integrate, particularly during old years of life, later years of life, particularly if we do not, we are not governed by vanity, that we can show our vulnerability, and we can live with uncertainty, and we we don't expect of ourselves things that are beyond our capabilities, and we do accept our dependency. It's like how to, when a doctor doesn't return one's phone call, how to be assertive, but without being bitter, to get what we need. When the nurse doesn't provide us with the care that we need, how to talk with him or her in a way that our needs are met. So there is something about the old age that is, things have to work. To be practical, things have to be practically useful for all ages, but particularly in in the later phase of life. So that's the about anima and animus. But about the self is that uh, I think that it's uh, it's about learning and growing into what we have the potential to be and to become. This is when that is, we have the opportunity, if we are still living and we can think clearly and we can relate openly, this is the time to become as much as one can be, to to again, not to be governed by the ego, but to be uh, to grateful for the opportunity, and um, to be curious about things that we don't know, and to live with the mystery of this life, and the fact that we are approaching a transition into something that we do not know. That mystery, to keep it and face it and live with it, like, but I'm talking about death. Live with it as a friend, as something that makes life more alive, more meaningful. A Persian poet, another Persian poet. This is a contemporary Persian poet, a modern Persian poet. He says that life is filled with the oxygen of death. So what he's talking about is death is really the oxygen of life, you know? So to live with death, not to avoid it, and to talk with each other about it. It's really important the to remove the taboo, not to be, not to be, uh, not to hide it. I think that it's very important to talk with our contemporaries about aging and getting older, and the limitations of the body, limitations of the intellect, limitations of dealing with the technology, need of doctors and nurses and tests and hospitals, to talk with each other about them, not to hide them, to talk with the younger people about process of aging and getting older, because not that they are necessarily all interested in old age, but some younger people are. They are, they want to know how it is to get old, How does it feel to get old? How does an old person approach death? And those younger people who are interested in talking about aging and getting old and older and dying, they're usually interesting people. They're people that one would enjoy communicating with. They are, and it's a valuable service, I think. It's a gift that we can give to them about how we are encountering this station of life. Okay, I have talked for an hour, almost. Judy, is this time to take a break or ask for questions, or how do you want to?
Well, we have one person with a raised hand,
Oh, okay.
Pat Larkin. So I'm asking her to unmute, and then Pat, go ahead.
We are going to be patient with each other with this technology.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Wrong button. Okay, Dr. Moradi, thank you so much. This is wonderful. I love that you're just speaking to us. What I want to share is a book that has been very helpful to me in facing death, and it's called The Grace in Aging: Awaken as You Grow Older. And it's written by a Dharma practitioner. She's no longer with us, but her name was Kathleen Dowling Singe, S-I-N-G-H, The Grace in Aging. I'll hold it up so you can see it. And what I found with this book was that, like, a few pages at night with my gratitude journal was very soothing. So very, very soothing writer. So I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Sharing with each other, sharing with each other what helps us at this station of life. That's really valuable. Thank you.
Now we have Randy Winters.
I was wondering, Dr. Moradi, I've always been very intrigued by what Jung said about how you need to develop a different set of values or a different way of being in the second half of life. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, as how you interpret his, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but if you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, he talks about it in terms of, he uses the analogy of the sun rising to its zenith during the first half of life. And the task of the old age is going towards the horizon, going towards the other direction of life. And rather than building a foundation for having a profession and a family and a place to live and safety, which is valuable and necessary aspects of younger years, the down from the summit of life is anticipation, or with the vision of the horizon in mind, that one has to live one's life with the limitations, with the reflections, and with search for the meaning of what the journey has been about and what it is for now. That's how I understand it. Yeah, he has wonderful things that he has said about old age. Also, particularly there's a chapter in volume 8 that he talks about stages of life, and his main focus is on old age. And in his memories and dreams and reflections, he talks about later phase of life and about development of the myth about death that has been, that is his contribution. Yeah, he has talked quite a bit about the second phase of life. And search for meaning, of course, is something that he advocates all the time.
Okay, we have Cameron Salick. I may not be pronouncing that right.
Yes. Yeah, this is Cameron Soleg. Thank you very much, Dr. Moradi, for this very nice speech. I just listened to you before with the Dr. Holokwi, all the seminar you had, all the CD I have it. I listened many times. It's very, very helpful. Thank you very much for that. But my question is, you mentioned the old age is including the humiliation, but we should be accepted. But the fears you mentioned, I need to know the stage of fears. What kind of fears, or just one kind of fear, or what's a kind of the stage of fear they have to go to the death position, or what death stage, whatever is named. I like to see it. What kind of fear? How can they prepare that fear, or they need it divided? They need it just stage it fear, little fear, a lot fear. What kind of fear they need to face? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the question. The fear, I mean, we have anxiety at all stages of life for different reasons. But what is common in the later phase of life are anxieties about fear about illness, process of dying, and sometimes death itself. So when the fear is about illnesses and the process of dying, there are things that we can do about them, about that kind of fear. So the fear, that fear is in the service of making life safe, practically making life more safe and more alive for us as we are getting older. The fear of death is about not having a myth about death and life beyond death, or if there is life beyond death. Not having that myth is something that creates an unnecessary fear, particularly if one views the end of life as the end of existence. Then it becomes a meaningless phase, or life itself becomes meaningless. So what then can counteract that fear is the search for meaning. And also, I think that one of the things that Jung emphasizes is that this station of life is particularly for the development of personal culture. And by culture, I think he means expansion of consciousness. Not that at other phases of life we don't need to do that, but this is particularly significant because we are confronted with things that we cannot do much about, such as death, you know? So in that sense, it's an opportunity to develop to develop a particular one's own idea about death. Like, we know that every living thing dies. So death is part of life in that sense, right? But every living thing also, when it dies, it comes back. In some form or the other, there is a return. Whether it's the return in mythology of religions or return in nature, that the vegetations return during the springtime. We have to have something that makes sense to oneself and is valuable, in my opinion, is valuable and practically helpful for the process of going towards death, for this phase of life that we are going towards death.
Sachiko Taki Reese.
Hey.
Hi, Sachiko.
Hi, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So good to
Right.
see you.
Stories, and it was nice. But I like to share because when you are talking about facing a shadow,
Personal shadow.
and then expanding consciousness,
Mhm.
yeah, talking about, and suddenly I just remembered Sufi's Nasruddin's story.
Okay,
He lost his key.
right.
And then it was evening, and he went to the street light. He was looking, and then friend said, "What are you looking?" "I lost my key." "Where did you lose it?" "It's over there, but it's dark."
So he's looking where it's like,
I thought, that's right. You have to expand your consciousness to that dark place. You just don't go there to just think, kind of thing. So I never had that association. So I thought I had to share with you.
it really fits right with Jung's analogy of the flashlight that I mentioned.
Yes.
It's very much similar to that. Thank
Thank
you. A Japanese person brings a Persian proverb back to the Persian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sachiko.
Yes. And I hope we are going to talk about merit or, benefit of aging too. You are going to?
Oh,
Yes. I hope you will. Are you going to talk about next hour?
you want to say something about the merits of getting older? Do you?
Well, I can say something because, uh, maybe last couple of years, I'm 82 right now. Okay. I see still, therapy, I do therapy. And lately, I really realize just when I'm listening to the clients talk or the couples talking, all the things are very clearly I see somehow clearly.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to remember nothing. I just kind of, so you say, listen or hear as it is, the person says, those things just naturally there. And I really realized before, I don't think it was like that.
You mean you don't have to think about it? It's just there.
Yeah, so it's nothing in my head.
Right.
Yes, and then just listening. But so when I see things are coming together, just clearly it shows up, connecting.
You said with couples, right?
Even the couples sessions.
So you see what the elements are between the two of them as images, right?
And then even the one person talking about, those long story, dream stories or daily life and so forth, it just come together. And so somehow, just like you say, all these desires or whatever, those kind of thoughts, those things are not there anymore.
And you consider it as you being at this station of your life,
Yeah.
right? Because of that.
So it's not the losing, it's gaining.
Yeah, it's gaining, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. But it's not it's not a product of the ego. It's the
No,
product
it's not. That's why it's saying it just shows up.
it just shows up, right? Yeah.
So that's
It's one of
quite encouraging.
it is very encouraging.
No.
It's not being identified with one's ego.
No. That's true.
Just be a member of the party.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
just
and then clarity comes.
yes.
Yeah.
I didn't say about the ego thing. Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's not there any.
Ego is not there.
Yeah, just only things that.
Yeah.
So it's easier.
And you share them.
Yes.
Share what comes with the patients.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not my interpretation.
No,
It's more like a coming together.
Yeah.
Reporting these things seems to be coming together.
Wonderful.
It's easier.
And it's so enlivening, isn't it? When that happens, it brings vitality to the, yeah.
just like my feedback for you about Nasruddin thing, it just shows up. I
Yeah,
was not
just showed up.
easy.
Yeah. The association to that just showed up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's easier now.
Yeah. Yeah, I always remember the Japanese myth of creation
Yes.
that we learned in your class that you taught.
Yes.
And those Japanese gods and how they create what is a wonderful stories that free us from the tyranny of the ego.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes. It's more natural, you know.
That's right, more natural. Exactly.
Kind of thing. Yes. Mhm.
Well, thank you, Sachiko.
Thank you.
We have a number of people with raised hands, including some who've asked before. So I'm going to ask people who haven't asked first, and we'll get to the others later as we have time. Preya Shaban, I'm not probably.
Yes, Piraya, you said it very
Hi,
well. Thank you.
Hi. So good
Yes,
to see you. So many-
thank you, Dr. Moradi. That's a wonderful lecture. So glad to see you. I had just had a comment regarding psychological development of aging. I noticed personally as people get older, especially in certain groups like musicians, they perform much better. Like that the persona is not there, like I have to look this way or that way to keep up, good image. So when they are very relaxed about it, and with that sense of self-acceptance and humility that you were talking about, I've noticed in certain, especially Iranian musicians and singers, they perform much better in a relaxed way.
Similar to what Sachiko was saying about her performing psychotherapy, the ego is out of the way.
Right,
Self-
right.
That's yeah.
Yes, yes, and I had a question regarding dreams, because I know you're also expert in that, dream interpretation and analysis, and so to me, everybody has a different image of death. We carry it throughout our lives, and or it's an implied learning. Sometimes we hear our parents or somebody says, oh, if you have such and such dream, that means death. Or maybe we develop a feeling about it, something we encounter very dark, and when we get up in the morning we feel, oh my gosh, was this death, or is this a warning or something. So what are the dreams of people who are afraid of death when they get older? Have you noticed any particular dreams or any symbolic dreams, or even archetypal dreams?
People who get, particularly people who are afraid of death and their dreams when they get older. Is that your question?
Yes, mainly yes. Those people. I have clients. Sometimes they refer to certain dreams, and when they encounter those dreams, it is as if a death sentence, and so they go there right away. Not they don't look at it immediately as something maybe symbolic, but to them it carries a message of death to them. And yeah, you kind of talk about it, and as if if there's something that is they want to get rid of in their lives, or release certain feelings or whatever, but to them it feels like death.
Mhm. I mean, the first thing I have to say about dream interpretation is that there is no generalized answer to
Right.
So we have to have, each dream has to be understood in the context of the person's life, the dreamer's life. So if the person is not actually in actual life I'm assuming that in actual life they are not confronting a life-threatening illness and they are not facing death at that particular moment, but there is an image of death, of either their own death or something in their life that they value that is dying. If that is the dream, it usually speaks to a fundamental transformation that has to take place. That is, and it's usually a transformation that the ego is not in harmony with. That the person doesn't want to, let's say they don't want to leave a particular relationship or a particular profession or a change a home or move from one country to the other. There is, each one of these situations are death, but the ego experiences them as if the totality is has to die, the totality of the individual, but they are usually about a major change in life or a particular psychological transformation, a shift of attitude and outlook and belief system that is at hand. So it really depends upon who is dreaming, what are the issues that they are dealing with, and then in that context we can say that those particular images, what they might mean about for the life of that individual.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we have a Jungian analyst who's a longtime friend of our club, John Porterfield.
Hello. Hi. Rod, hi, thank you so much. I have to tell you, it's so wonderful to be in a large group and talking about these things. I feel calmed. It's reassuring. I'm getting a lot out of it. I thank you. I really just want to say, you know how sometimes you get a song and it's in your mind and you can't stop singing it? I came across, when I was thinking of my own death, I came across a short sentence, and I just wanted to share that with people. It's in me constantly, and it's calming me. It is that life is a short pause between two mysteries.
Right, right. Incredible. Incredible. We don't know where we were and we don't know where we are going. And this is a very short pause in between the two. Absolutely. Makes so much sense, isn't it? And it relieves us. It really relieves us from the fear of death and ending of life. And such a wonderful thing. It's like this keeps going in your mind, right? So it's like being on pause. When we die, then the movement begins. Paradoxically. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, John. Now we have Marita Crutzen.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Dr. Moradi, your talk was such a communication of yourself. It was, you really were present to all of us, I felt, and that was pretty amazing. And also, I had the experience of the light growing. You were raising our awareness as we opened ourselves to you. And that was a profound gift.
Thank you.
I do have a question. And the question has to do with what you spoke briefly about depression and depression being a regression. And I wonder if you could comment a little bit more about that. In the context of aging.
Yeah, it's depression, if we define it as hopelessness, helplessness, and being unable to move towards what one wants to do. You know, certain paralysis implied in depression. And also, so in that sense, dependency. So depression of older years is about, at least to me, it's about not having hope. For the ultimate hope would be that the transition is into something rather than into nothing. That's a hopeless outlook if the end is actually the end and there is nothing, you know? So that would be one. So when depression comes, one has to examine one's attitude towards the meaning of this difficulties of this particular phase of life and one's attitude towards its transition, you know? So in that sense, it's regression into a mechanical attitude towards the body and life. You know, it's, if we view it only as a machine, it's a regression. It's not expansion of consciousness, but it's constriction of it. Do you know of what this life is about? Yeah. It, when the Nasreddin that Sachiko talks about, when he's looking for his keys, if he stays if he doesn't bring the light to other parts of his existence, he cannot find his keys. So in not finding his keys, he remains in depression.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know?
Yes.
So depression is, Von Franz says depression is the greatest gift. You know, she starts one of her books by the way, thinking about references, she talks about dreams of death. You know, for the person, Piraya, you were asking about the person who, your question was different. It wasn't the person who's actually facing death, but people who are actually facing death and have certain dreams. Von Franz has a book on dreams of death, and that's valuable. But in terms of depression, I don't know whether it's in that book or another book that she talks about depression as being the greatest gift for beginning consciousness about, you know, there is an expectation sometimes that when the expectation is not met, then the person experiences depression. So that expectation has to be encountered. When one feels that the body is not functioning the way one expected it to function, you know, at the later station of life, and one gets angry about it and depressed about it, it's that's the depression. And by regression, I mean, I mean to return to an earlier phase of coping with helplessness than how at this station of life we can bring consciousness to the helplessness and grow with it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And now we've got Randy Winters again.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Moradi, I just wonder if you could clarify, you know, you were talking about the importance of consciously doing our shadow work and integrating, facing those things. But then you talk about fear as maybe safety in our lives, like creating safety. And that almost seems contradictory, you know, like facing those difficult things in our shadow, but then do we want to create that safety or go into those emotions? So I'd be curious what you have to say about that.
I don't know how I connected shadow with safety and fear. uh, fear, basically anxiety, is about not feeling safe. So we, when we have anxiety, usually when what we mean by anxiety is that there is a particular fear that is not conscious to the individual. So the individual experiences it as restlessness, difficulty sleeping, difficulty calming down, feeling doom and gloom, you know, or fearing doom and gloom. So when the function of fear, when it's encountered consciously, is to clarify what is it that we are afraid of, to make that conscious. What is not conscious, by making it conscious, we usually can handle whatever that element is. And if we cannot, then we can ask for help. We can find practical ways. For example, the fear of getting sick and dying, and a process of dying, is something that we can do something about. We can prepare ourselves. We can prepare our environment for that anticipation of that downhill movement. We can prepare for ourselves for the actual phase of dying, and have as I said, have the advanced directives ready. So both in writing and communicating that to the people who will be in charge of us or taking care of us when we can't make our own decisions. So that's the function of fear. And then in terms of expansion of consciousness, when we encounter what we are afraid of, and when we are capable of overcoming those fears, then certain self-confidence develops in the individual. And that confidence opens us up to facing more challenges of life, and more challenges of that we face as we grow older. Shadow is a different issue. Shadow is, the term shadow is not a good term, I don't think. Because there is, in shadow, there is always potential for growth of the individual. You know, there are certain abilities of the human being that has been hidden from oneself, let's say out of fear of not being good enough, not being complete enough, not being artistic enough, not being bright enough, not whatever, not being generous, whatever those concerns are, they we have to learn about those positive aspects of ourselves that are hidden from ourselves. So that those would be the positive ones, that if we invite exchanges and interactions with people that we trust, that they can give them to us, and we can work on them, and on learning about ourselves and expanding oneself. The negative shadows are, of course, also, usually they happen in interpersonal relationships that we ignore, abandon, disregard, disrespect. We do those kinds of things without always being conscious of them. And if we learn about them either in the process of psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, or in any trusting relationship, then we can work on modifying them, integrating them, learning about ourselves through them, learning where they come from, what their functions has been, and perhaps carry them I'm not saying to throw away all of those attributes, because some of them are very valuable, but carry them consciously. If you want to leave a relationship, to leave that relationship with consciousness rather than unconsciously disregarding, ignoring, abandoning someone who is of value to us. So that's, yeah, that's my thoughts about two, shadow and anxiety. They're separate, they're different.
I don't see any more raised hands. If anybody's being shy, please raise your hand. Now is your time. Maybe I'll share a story of my father. Oh, there's a raised hand. I'm going to go to that. Mary Francos, as soon as she unmutes herself, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for all the wisdom that you've shared. In the interest of what do I want to say? Promulgating the positive nature of getting older. Sometimes I refer to myself, I'll say, well, you know, I'm old. And invariably somebody will say, oh, no, you're not old. I'm always kind of stuck for a response. I mean, besides, yes, I am. Yes, actually, I am. Do you have any response to that? It's as if there's a collusion going on that to say that you're old is a pejorative, or looking for someone to assure you that no, you're not. Partly I say it so I'll hear it.
Yeah. I think it's a cultural thing, isn't it? I remember my grandmother, whenever she asked me for a cup of tea and I gave it to her, her prayer was that I hope that you get to be very old. It was like her wish for me was to get old.
For you, yeah.
It was something to look forward to, and a station of life to arrive at, which is of value and respect. And I think that it's and most cultures they respect the elder, you know, they go to the elders of the community for guidance and support. This culture, they go to Google and they go to technology. You know, we are not sources of wisdom for them and guidance for them, which is very unfortunate, because there is no machine that can substitute this a psyche having grown through its several decades and getting to a place of having both the experiences and the reflections of age. So I think that when they say, no, you're not old, culturally, it sounds like they are, and I hear it the way you hear it also, that it's as if there is something wrong with being old. And, you know, I don't know, sometimes it's, maybe we have to educate them what it means to be old. Maybe they think that maybe they have an anticipation of their own later years in a negative sense, rather than something positive, that this is an expansion that only comes by getting older and older. I don't think that we can learn many things in life without getting to be old. We really have to experience it in order to be able to to impart it to the younger generation. Yeah, so sometimes sharing with them maybe. Yeah, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I also think it's really valuable to say your age out loud. It's like it's a secret thing. Years ago, I was around little kids a lot, and I would say to little kids, "How old are you?" And they'd say, "I'm 4." So I started saying, "I'm 45." And they would look and they'd say, "You're older than my dad."
Right.
And I would say, "I'm older than almost everybody." And it's great. So I kind of want to promulgate that to say, because we have crazy ideas
Yeah.
about what 75 looks like, or what 75, what it is. They can't break down unless we start saying our age.
Definitely.
Yeah.
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 I agree.
Thomas Lyon.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Moradi. I guess there's an aspect there's this part that you talk about and others do about fear of death. There's this other part that I notice in clients where it's a grief about leaving life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's and yet there's some deny it going all the way into it by not being prepared or something like that. And like right now, for instance, with COVID, with people all of a sudden getting sick and they don't have time to prepare because they never imagined it would be happening so quickly to them if they get terribly sick from COVID.
Yeah.
And then the aloneness of that, but the also the not being prepared in a way. My dad and mom, I mean, a great gift they gave us is that they had gone to the mortuary. They had everything prepared beforehand. They had everything paid beforehand. I think they had even written their obituaries beforehand. And so they didn't want to burden us with all of that. My dad even had a one-page document that said, I want to be buried with mom. I want to be cremated. I don't want any services, da, 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 da. And one day he was sitting on the patio and I stopped off on my way home and he said, "I want to go through this with you." And we did.
I want to do what?
He wanted to talk to me about it. And so I'm sitting in the patio with him and out of the blue, he gives me this document, this one page. And because I was his executor, and I said, "Yeah, I'll do this." And then I looked down it a little bit more, and then I looked at him and I said, "It doesn't mean we can't have a party, though. It doesn't say anything about us not having to have a party." And he gets this little smile and he says, "No, you can have a party." And I think that's the part with families, is talking through those things.
Yeah.
Because there's this notional part of what it's going to be like, which is what we all have. But then there are the functional parts in life. And I think that's the part that's important. So I just wanted to add that, and thank you for this evening.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
Great.
Wonderful.
I'm actually waiting for Terry. Terry?
I may have shared this before, but something that Mary said reminded me. I think it sort of set my philosophy of life at a ripe old age of 10. But it was the eve of my 10th birthday. I was in bed and I was sort of thinking about it, and oh my gosh, I've lived 10 years. It's a decade, all of these things. And then I went, oh my gosh, well, when I go to 20, I'll really be old at 20. It's going to be double what I've lived. And then I went to 30 and I went to 40, and I had something to think about at each age. I got up to 80 and I went, wait a minute. I realized then that you're as old as you feel you are. And I think I feel that. I mean, I'm 73 and I think I feel like I'm 35. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, so age is really, the number doesn't matter in that sense.
It doesn't matter. It's how you, what you do and how you perceive yourself to be at that age.
How alive you are at any,
And I learned that at 10.
right. Right. Wonderful. Such beautiful story. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to
Okay.
share that. Thank you.
Pat Larkin. Again,
Okay, this goes back to Mary's comment, and it's just a little anecdote. My brother is 3 years older than I am. I'm 72. And we have phone conversations. He lives in Buffalo. And one day, not too long ago, it made me have this little paradigm shift. I was talking to him about something and I said, I don't know what the issue was, but I said, you know, Jerry, I'm a senior. Ha ha ha. And he said back to me, no, Pat, you're not a senior, you're an elder. And since then, I feel the wisdom that is in this body and soul a lot more and respect it. So most of the people in our club were elders. Thank you.
So important to value our contemporaries, because we are the ones who have to, we know that being 72, being 80, whatever we are, it's really, it's certainly not a negative, you know, and it's a cause for celebration,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then we also, you know, we all have learned things in our long lives that we can share with each other. I think that it's an important thing to do, to share what we have learned about this, having lived more than I have lived, more than majority of the people, average people in the world, you know. So this has been a great gift, you know. So we have to share it, so, and we have to impart it, and we have been lucky, we have had the grace of God, but we also have done something to get here, you know. So that's the other part of it too,
Mm-hmm.
that we need to share.
Thank you.
But thank you. Judy, you were going to tell us a story before.
Well, my father had a lot, I mean, from listening to you, I now know I would use the word vanity to describe what he was like up until he was 91. And I remember he lived in New Jersey, and we all traveled to Denver for a relative's wedding. And he was very upset because he discovered he had forgotten to pack something important. And he was beating himself up on it because he really prided himself on having a sharp mind, and he used checklists, and how could this have happened? And what does it mean that he forgot this thing? And I remember I got kind of angry, and I said, you know, Dad, 80% of the people your age are dead, and the other 15% are in nursing homes, so you're doing really well. And I worried that he wouldn't ever be able to, you know, if he had to be in a wheelchair or whatever, he would never be able to accept it. But interestingly, he had a stroke when he was 92, and that completely changed him. And he acquired the humility that you're talking about, and he was very able to accept his limitations then, and not rail against them anymore. So that was an interesting experience that I had.
But sometimes it takes a stroke to get there, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been a very fun couple of hours.
Indeed.
Talking with you guys and hearing your thoughts and sharing together has been great.
Do you have any parting words for us?
Yeah, talk about aging. We need to talk about aging and getting old, and we need to talk about death and dying. you know, they shouldn't be taboos and hidden, I think. Yeah. And thank you for organizing this, giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts at this ripe age of 72. So it's what
Oh, thank you so much. And thank everybody for the interesting conversation. And I want to reiterate what Marita said about you being so present. That's something that I think we all really felt, and that was extremely valuable. And so we thank you. And I guess we'll say goodbye and hope to see everybody in February to talk about the I Ching.
such a wonderful thing, the I Ching.
Yeah.
Really, so much I have learned from the I Ching and enjoyed it so much. Yeah, great. Who's doing the I Ching?
Dennis Merritt.
Dennis Merritt.
He lives in Wisconsin. He has a PhD in insect biology.
He does I Ching.
And he's an eco-psychologist. And he spoke to our club a number of years ago about eco-psychology. But he also has a little bit of a specialty about the I Ching, which he's, and so we're able to get him all the way from Wisconsin virtually in February.
Okay.
So I hope to see you all then.
Okay.
And thank you again, and goodbye.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful.